Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the anime The Irregular at Magic High School on Netflix. And this was a weird one. I've started and stopped watching through this multiple times because of just some of the issues that crop up in this anime. I think I'm so hard on it because it has a lot of potential and just the execution of it does not work very well. So, the basic premise is this is a history where we've got into conflicts about resources and magic becomes the prevalent form of kind of warfare and combat. And instead of getting into like nuclear arms races, they get into magician arms races. And of course, this is in the year 2095, our focus is at the first Magic High School and following Tetsuya Shiba and his sister as they're enrolled in this school. Now, that, of course, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool. And we get into the nuts and bolts of, like, how magicians can cast magic and everything, but it's the basic structure of everything that really kind of messes with it. Instead of taking a character-based approach, it's very apparent that it's more of a plot thing or a plot-focused storytelling structure where this event needs to occur, so we have to angle everything to make it work. And Tetsuya, he could have been a more interesting character, but how he's played off makes him even worse than Kirito in the beginning. Mainly because he just wins at everything. I mean, we've got this part where he's technically a Course 2 student, and he's not that adept at certain kinds of magic, but we learn that he's completely and utterly OP by the end of the series with essentially godlike powers, and he just starts fixing things just because he can. And you essentially run into the Superman problem where, okay, Superman has all these powers, how do we make this conflict interesting to watch him go up against? Because if he could do all these things, you're not really invested in seeing if he can overcome this. It's just, oh, he's going to overcome this. And it kind of dulls the kind of tension that goes on throughout. And some of it is just completely crazy. Like the first bit, we see him dealing with like discrimination because there's Course 2 students which aren't as adept in certain kinds of magic, and Course 1 students are like God tier and everything, leading to this whole discussion kind of about discrimination that really is just kind of dropped even more as the series goes on. I'm like, okay, you could have went with something interesting there, but we see like this one student who's part of this club this kendo club has pretty much been brainwashed by this, let's see here, since everything has pretty much been put into kind of 4 separate kind of national categories, the Great Asia Alliance has been using infiltrator cells to try and like destabilize Japan, because Japan is not within the Great Asian Alliance thing, and they want to weaken and steal stuff from their enemies. So this terrorist organization pretty much tries to go into the school and steal stuff and has pretty much hypnotized students. And it's not inherently a bad setup, but the thing is these students are capable of just trashing these terrorists to the point of like, oh, we don't have any tension here. I mean, Tetsuya and his sister are just, after the whole incident at the building where they're trying to steal stuff, they actually go after the group of terrorists with the blessing from the student council and actually help from the student council, and then just fucking annihilate them and take the one head dude who's been hypnotizing the people. Important bit here, The dude gets his arm chopped off, and it's not as censored as something that happens later in the series, and it's really weird why the censoring happens. So that whole situation is brought back up, and Tetsuya really doesn't show any emotion. He's mainly just interested in protecting his sister, which that is the creepiest fucking... I've got Oni-sama fucking burned into my head for how many times his fucking sister says that goddamn line. And it's just creepy as hell, because she's in love with him, and he's just pretty much acting like a bodyguard. But not only can he have, like, godlike powers, he's also pretty much being a master magical engineer at his father's company, and it's never clearly explored what happened with their mother and their father and the 10 clans that, like, rule over Japan and delineate everything going on with magic. It's put in there, but none of it is really explored or whatnot. They're like, oh, we want this thing. And I'm like, that's more interesting. Go more into that. We then shift to the second arc, which is the 9 schools competition. Again, essentially your tournament arc. Would have been cool, but the main arc of the conflict is that a criminal syndicate is trying to rig everything so that way another school wins and that they win all the bets. And it's just not that interesting. And what you really start to see in this series is that every time something magical is explained, it is in the most jargon-heavy, nonsensical shit possible. Now granted, even though I'm reading this in subtitles and just trying to keep up because it just goes so fast and it's done in the most boring way possible. There's nothing really going on except them trying to explain certain things. Sometimes somebody is actively doing the magic, but then it's taken out and we're seeing an almost essentially what I would deem a PowerPoint presentation of someone explaining a technical concept with as much jargon as possible to a technical audience that is supposed to know what these things mean. And I'm just like, after a while, I was just like, I don't care about that. It's the most problematic part of this magic system is they are trying to be a hard magic system and a soft magic system at the same time and just flowing with whatever they kind of want. And it really takes you out and you're just like, I just want a good story and good action. Now there's some good action and stuff, but then ass pulls start to get pulled because one, you're not as appraised of his abilities, Tetsuya's abilities as possible, so it seems like he pulls out an ass thing, but granted, it is a little bit teased because essentially his sister frickin' does some damage to him where he has to heal himself, and that becomes important in one of the last things where he eventually is pulled into the competition, even though he was just pretty much being used as a person that calibrates the magical devices that people use. But, of course, since they've decided to go after his sister, he goes completely and utterly fucking demon mode and goes and kills all the people associated with the no-head criminal syndicate, with it not even really being explained. It's funny. You will explain these minute details for the flying magic, for how this person's magical device was calibrated to do all these shooting things. You don't explain to us why he can use his gun from, like, kilometers away and just dust these people. Like, they just, poof, he takes them out of existence. Granted, it's explained towards the end that he somehow has control of pretty much all matter, which he can disintegrate or bring in. Well, he's never shown to bring anything into existence, but he has the ability to pretty much deconstruct matter and then, like, reassemble shit as well. So it's like, alright. Evidently his sister has control over that because we get to the next arc where he is then dragged into this thesis competition, which is again targeted by the Alliance, and this time they actually send operatives in a warship into it. And it's like, I don't mind high school students going up against strange and dangerous things, but you gotta do it on their level. I'm just seeing this and I'm like, oh, My Hero Academia does this better. Because even though they are like superhero kids, everything seems like, okay, they have the potential to die here because they're not god tier Tetsuya here. And this is where one of the weird bits of censoring come into effect because he starts like blowing people, well, him and the Crimson Prince that he had faced off from the third high school are in this, and they just start kind of blowing people up. And some of it's kind of weirdly censored, like they make it dark, but then you see the red blood, and it's like, okay. But we get into the effect where Tetsuya and the rest of his support group are, well, he has gone off with his military buddies, which I don't know why you wouldn't have just essentially just kept him as a military asset and just let him do whatever the hell he wants in school whenever he wants. And his group's trying to protect all the rest of the students. Like, one dude gets a shrapnel bit in the back. Not censored. One dude gets his leg blown off, and it's like dark as shit, and I'm like, okay, you can infer that his leg was blown off, but why can't I see that his leg is blown off? It's a really weird bit since I've seen one dude in the beginning of this season have his arm cut off. But Tetsuya comes in, and we see that the healing thing that he is able to use on himself, he is able to use on his classmates. And we see that he has essentially moved to a supporting role in this military operation, essentially letting his people die and then resurrect them. And his sister explains to the group that, of course, he has to experience all that pain of that death or that injury in a condensed time frame. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And that evidently that part of his feeling, he's been locked by his sister, and it's not really explained or delved into why, or how this relationship is, or why she is so infatuated with him to the point of like loving him. It gets to the end, and he, of course, uses his powers to essentially destroy the great Asian fleet that was going to set out to Japan. And also the warship that was the base of operations. They were trying to escape, but he nukes them, essentially. And that's where it ends off. We don't get explanations of why he's cold or only feels anger when somebody tries to hurt his sister. And you don't really feel like anything's ever in danger. He's got the power to heal his friends, so even if they get injured and he's able to get to them within about 24 hours, it's all fine. There's no real sense of tension or growth. And it's annoying because it's not horrible. You do see some flashes of kind of good stuff, good character development with certain supporting characters. You also get some weird tonal shifts that sometimes happen, more outlier blips. Like during the night schools competition, Tetsuya's sister Miyuki is in a bathhouse scene with these girls, and they're having fun and messing around with this one chick, and it's just, it gets fan servicey, but I have no problem with fan service or anything. It's just the tone shifts from, oh, it's always this serious kind of cold thing because we are usually used to following Tetsuya around. And it's just like kind of jarring. We also see that with like two of these other characters, this guy that can use ancient magic and this girl that has super sensitive eyes. And I'm like, oh, this is better kind of balancing of lighthearted because everything is kind of just cold and calculated and just through Tetsuya's viewpoint that we see since he's the main person that we follow around most of the time. And it's just jarring when they pop up and you're like, what? And it would have actually benefited from him making more jokes or something like that, or attempting to make jokes, because sometimes he does with his whole sister relationship, but it's more like, no, creepy, stop it. Because it's only a good joke if you're able to diffuse the shit and pretty much tell your sister to stop fucking doing that shit. And granted, he does tell her to not do that stuff, but she just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it, and you're like, okay, you're defaulting of what you want is these two to get together. And I'm kind of like, no. It's just messed up, creepy. It has more of a creepy, devoted, obsessed thing going on than any kind of other romance going on in this. I'm just like, I need something that's like not this fucked up. So the action scenes are all right done. I mean, they're not the best that I've seen because there's really no tension. Your best action scenes that you want are tension of like back and forth, and you get that triumphant kind of moment. The CGI is dated, and it especially gets kind of weird during the Nine Schools competition because for some odd fucking reason, they decided to take some of the dancing students and make them into 3D models, and it looked wrong, just weird, fucked up. And I'm like, well, why is this here? You could have just done like background drawings and just copy people over it, just seeing them kind of dance and move weirdly. It's just like, what the hell? Now, the better CGI deals with like Tetsuya when he's got his super suit on and dealing with the kind of mecha things at the end of the series. And then, like, I like when the CGI stuff deals with the magic, but other than that, I'm just like, it would have been better if you had just done it completely 2D. And then sparingly did certain CGI things rather than what they put in. So, if you're looking at this for action, I wouldn't recommend it. If you're looking into this for a good story and structure, I really wouldn't recommend it. And if you're really looking into it for character development, I wouldn't really recommend it. This is more of a thing if you've got time and want to see what a potentially interesting world of magic could be, and you need something on in the, well, not in the background because you're going to be reading the subtitles. Even just trying to keep up with the jargon, it's kind of like, there's so many technical hurdles. I wouldn't recommend this. It's not because it's horrible. If you've got nothing to watch and you're kind of bored, sure, give it a go and just not expect much from it. That would be my recommendation. So those are my opinions on the anime. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.